Welcome to Everything is Dead, the show where we challenge the myths of B2B and uncover how go-to-market professionals are thriving in channels everyone says are dead. Today, we're diving into all things demos with James Kaikis, CRO at Testbox. Welcome to the show, mate. Really excited to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here and excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah, me too, mate. And again, like I said, a lot of our listeners are used to the same old cold calling is dead, cold emailing is dead. And so this is a bit
Yeah,
of a different topic, but one that I think is
yeah,
going to be extremely interesting for the audience. As
sure,
is normal, mate, I'll start off with just a broad sweeping statement and just
sure.
get your initial kind of gut reaction to it. If I said to you, demos are dead in B2B SaaS today, how do you react to that statement?
Yeah, demos are not dead, but I will say that they are taking on a new role. At Testbox, we've been talking about the new go-to-market playbook as your podcast and other things we're talking about. I think what's got us here over the last decade is not going to work as well in the future, right? We've just seen everyone take what's been successful and recreate it, and essentially it's become noise. It's like, how do you break through? So demos are not dead, but they are taking on a new role. And I would say they're becoming commoditized. And what does that mean? So let's take a quick step back is seeing the product matters. Think about SaaS and software over the last decade is, you requested a demo, you had a BDR disco, and sometimes in some companies, there was like 4 discos before you ever got to see a product. And you were like sold this dream and looked at this amazing experience. And then when you got the product, it was a nightmare. I like the joke that I'm not sure how you feel about Game of Thrones, but that Game of Thrones meme of the beautiful, professionally painted horse at the beginning that turns into a stick figure at the end. However you feel about Game of Thrones, like that's what's happened in software as well, right? And this is why we have companies with massive churn problems. And I think it's been poor sales behavior to no fault of any of the sellers. That's just eroded trust with buyers. And so people want to see the product now. They want to get hands-on. And I think when I talk about demos being commoditized, demos have taken on this whole new scope. Then it's you go to a website and you now can get a product tour, which a lot of times talks about the demo automation where Testbox plays. But product tour is typically top of the funnel, great for early conversations. It's good to let someone see what your life's going to look like, good for BDR outreach, but it doesn't typically replace that live sales demo, POC or POV, proof of value of getting hands-on. And I think that is what is so interesting is sure, demos have changed, but it's because people want to see and understand and feel the product. And so demos are not dead. They've just changed.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. So at SendSpark, we're primarily a PLG product, right? Fundamentally, which means you can go on and sign up and literally test out the tool. Now, again, I think we went through this like interesting period in time where every startup that was being created was like, we need to be PLG because the
Totally.
buyer wants to do it themselves. But I think you bring up an interesting point, and actually where we've started to head from a SendSpark perspective, and I actually know it's the same for other PLG companies like Slack and other companies like that, where actually it's sales assisted PLG, which
Sure.
actually I think fills into your vision of kind of letting the buyer decide what they would like to do, which is,
Yeah.
look, if you don't want to speak to anybody at SendSpark, absolutely go ahead, jump into the product. However, if you've got remaining questions or you're a traditional buyer who actually wants to chat to somebody live,
Mhm.
I'm going to give you that option as well. So I wonder, like, looking at through that lens, do you think the primary kind of thing for go-to-market leaders to look through is just buyer preference and giving them
Yeah.
as many ways to buy it?
Yeah. I love this question. I love that you're thinking about this because I think it's just buyer experience. What is the buyer experience? And as an organization, your most successful customers, how did they come in? And I think that what we saw with a lot of PLG products is like, there are very few companies that can run pure PLG and become $1 billion business. They're out there, but you have to have some sort of hybrid motion because you have to have so much volume on the onesie twosies. And then your product has to be so simple and deliver so much value to have that escape velocity within an organization that you need to figure that out. And even if you were just allowing someone to come in and not being hands-on, you have to make sure that they're utilizing your product the right way. And again, I think a lot of companies over-rotated on PLG, especially the super complex products and multi-integrated products that are like, yeah, oh, we have a PLG motion. Somebody goes in there and they're like, where do I even start? Like,
Yeah.
how do I even use this product? And they drop out. But I think that's what's so interesting. That's what I do like about your product, because I think it does have the ability to have the escape velocity. But what happens when you are, and you talk about the assisted, is like you're penetrating an account. They've got tens of thousands of users, potential users. You're going to probably need a sales assisted motion to get in there if you've only got 1 to 5% penetration.
And it even, so I think people have this kind of romantic vision of PLG that you've just referenced, which is I'm going to come in, and the value piece is something people do not understand fundamentally. And we're reworking this at SenseBark, which is our value is book meetings. Fundamentally, if you ask me, like, video is a mechanism to book meetings. And so
100%. I agree with
the
you.
result of that, it's like you need to integrate your sales engagement tool. You also need to be really good at recording a video, because not a silver bullet, right? So there's all these things that could go wrong
Sure.
if it's left to the user to do it themselves fundamentally. There's also the component of, if you are the CRO or the VP of sales, and we've got enterprise accounts that are paying us tens of thousands, right? Instead of a single user account,
Sure.
you are not going to, there's a procurement process, right? There are security things that you need to go through.
Absolutely.
So this romantic vision of actually you're going to get Google sign up for your product and suddenly the whole of Google uses your tool is unrealistic, to be totally honest with you. And so I like what you said there around it needing to be a hybrid model.
Yeah.
I also think companies now are in a weird position where you've got an enterprise motion and now you want to turn on PLG. I think it's harder to do that fundamentally than starting PLG and then expanding. I don't know if you want to dig into that, because I'm sure there's people listening. Oh, yeah, PLG kind of sounds cool. Like maybe we should turn it on.
I would love to dig into this, because we're actually seeing this at Testbox, right? Because, what Testbox is allowing essentially companies to do is showcase a best in class customer account each and every time with like user behavior simulation, and even get on like proof of value. And I can dig into some of the nuances there. What has happened is a lot of these companies that have amazing PLG motions are now trying to go up market into the enterprise, and they have no idea where to start, right? Their products are built a certain way. Their go-to-market motions are built a certain way. They are trying to figure out how to make that leap. And it has been fascinating, because we've talked to a lot of companies, and I'll be transparent. A lot of them have been like, wow, we didn't realize how far behind we are on our motion and all the things that we need to do to get our motion in place and get our organization in place to go and have success here. Because I think to the point you made is these companies have so much success on PLG, and I don't want to name examples of ones that I've talked to, but they just think that they could just turn this mechanism on. And let's use it Atlassian, for example. That was something that they did a couple of years ago and realized, oh, this is a lot harder than we expected. Slack, another example.
Yeah. And I think it's just interesting in general, because you are absolutely spot on that there's so much that goes into enterprise. Like, you now need customer success and a really good enterprise customer success motion. The same ways that you bring in PLG leads are actually going to be very different. It's almost like a more traditional go-to-market motion where you probably you now need account executives, right? Like all of this stuff. I 100% agree. Let's turn on to the kind of first part of the question. I always like to get really tactical with advice we give here. And so I think you mentioned Testbox, and I'm obviously a fan. I've known business for a while. And so I guess, first of all, just as a plug for Testbox, how do you differ to like maybe some of the interactive kind of demo solutions out there in the market? And then we can actually dig into, hey, like fundamental steps. How do we get people to buy that?
So most people know of the product tour softwares that are like screenshots of your product that live on your website. We tend to partner with those companies because we are live actual product that is synthetically created with AI. So what I like to say is imagine your best customer, account, how they use your product and how they use your product every single day. What if you could essentially demo that to every single prospect and then let every prospect get in that environment and use that product? That's essentially what we've been able to do. So again, we are a little bit further down the funnel. We're mid funnel to late funnel on that demo, and then that proof of concept, proof of value where you hands on, because I tend to believe, and I've been in this space for a long time with Pre-Sales Collective, a lot of these companies in this demo automation space were my partners. So I've watched this space be born and watched this evolve. Is that it's great when you come to a website and you can now see what your life might look like, but if you ever had one of those experiences, like you can't click everywhere, you can't actually see what it's like. So it's good for generating interest, but not to take you all the way through a sales cycle, especially with complex products like customers like Gong, Outreach, Apollo are they use Testbox because we allow the incredible AI to work in the demo environments. And so again, it's a different nuance. And we are trying to educate the market that like, wow, this is what we do, because a lot of companies use Testbox as the main demo environment, main proof of value environment, and then use product tour softwares on top of it, which is very unique and very different than what people are used to.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's go to if I'm a company that sat there and I'm thinking about, okay, we're either having people drop off during our sales cycle, we need to
Totally.
get the demo component of our go-to-market figured
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
What's some of the places you'd start? And again, like maybe even before you go out and get a solution, are there certain things they need to
Yeah.
do from like a product or
Yeah.
website, or what things are you looking at from a company standpoint?
This is one of my favorite things to talk about, right? So for those that don't know, I co-founded the Pre-Sales Collective, which is a global community for solutions engineers. And I've been a solutions engineering leader for my career. What we've been taught as like sales engineers, solutions engineers is tell a good story. Let someone imagine their life in your product. What ends up happening is that like I, as a solutions engineer, I, as a salesperson, am painting this vision in this demo, right? Maybe it's even a quick 5-minute video or demo, 30-minute demo, and I'm painting this vision. What you as the prospect are hearing versus what you're seeing on the screen don't always match. I just had a conversation with a prospect yesterday who said that they have a ton of penetration in FinServe, and they literally show a manufacturing demo to FinServe companies. So think about it. You're telling this story about what their life's going to look like, and they're seeing manufacturing products and a manufacturing story on the screen instead of another FinServe company. And so I think the biggest thing is think about the buyer experience. How do we make that time to value a lot quicker? And it's being able to see what my life is like. And I talked to a customer yesterday who said now their motion with Testbox is literally they talk to prospects, and prospects are like, wait, are you in my live account? Did you create this using our data? Because it looks very similar. So there's that again, industry or vertical or persona based demo. I think that's always the first place to start, regardless if you're using a product like Testbox or not.
And so let's talk about, because I'm sure there's people at different stages from either a funding or a scale standpoint.
Yeah.
When is this a good motion to implement as a
Yeah.
business? Are you saying, okay, if you're an enterprise solution, this should be in from day one? Or are you saying, hey, you need certain things in place before even considering a solution like Testboxes?
Yeah, I think this is what's so interesting about software and tech is that when companies create software, you're creating software for an end user to use it to get value, not for your own team to be able to showcase it a certain way.
Yep.
And so I think most of the time companies are strapped for resources to be able to create demo environments and create proof of concepts and proof of values that actually inspire. But a lot of times they technically can't. Again, what we do when I say user behavior simulation is we have ways to send hundreds of thousands of emails or phone calls or Zoom meetings, right? You can't do that on your own. You have to hire a couple dozen people to like fake that, right? And to do it ongoing. And so at the end of the day, regardless of where you're at in that maturity, what you can start doing is understanding, how does my buyer want to buy my product? To the point you made earlier. And how do I get them to understand the value that they're going to derive from my product as fast as possible? How do you get that aha moment as quickly as possible? That's the name of the game in software right now, because there's so much noise out there and you got to get to the aha moment.
So much noise, so many solutions. And I think there's the old adage that time kills all deals. And so I think what you're suggesting is like, how do you move that forward like a month or a couple of months, which is worth its weight in gold fundamentally. Let's talk a little bit about the buyer, right? So we've talked about it from the company side. How do I move people along? We referenced it a little bit there in terms of like why there is this apathy from the buyer standpoint. And so like you being in the industry for so long, why has that happened? Is it just there's too many SaaS solutions out there? Is it because we're still in the antiquated sales motions that have been set up like 10, 20 years ago? Like why are buyers hating buying at the moment?
Yeah. Wonderful question. And I laugh because there's a couple of things. There's a couple of macro trends, as I like to say, that are happening now. One, we've been selling snake oil for a long time. There are a lot of companies out there that have been lying through their teeth on what they sell and how it delivers value. That's number one. So trust has eroded. But what's really interesting is I've been a solutions engineering leader for over a decade. I've worked at big companies, small startups, and I've been taught my entire career no proof of concepts, no proof of values. Do whatever you can to not let someone get hands-on the product. Why is that? Why is that? Because the products don't work.
Sounds crazy. It sounds crazy when you said it, but you're totally right.
It's nuts. I literally taught this for years that I even was ingrained in my head for a while that like no POCs. I have to approve every single POC and I'm going to do everything in my power prior to avoid that POC and that POV. And that's the thing, man. It's like a lot of these products don't work. And let me actually give a very clear example. I won't call it the company. There's been a company that's been hounding me for a while and they decided, and they got a great product. Don't get me wrong, but we use a competitive solution and they literally gave me a free trial. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'll spend 15 minutes logging into this free trial. Guess what? I logged in and it was blank. And I was like, do you really think that I have time to set this up? It's Q4. I'm planning for Q1. I'm involved in prod dev, like roadmap planning. Like, I don't have time to do this. And I literally sent back a reply. I was like, hey, look, this is what Testbox does. Is like, I could come in here and see what my life would look like and check it every couple of days and see all that simulated behavior. And that's the thing, right? It's really hard to do. The reality is this is really hard to do. And this is why companies and organizations have been like, no demos, no POCs, no POVs. And if I look at my own career, it's really funny, right? When I was at Showpad early on, we had a competitor that we would go up head to head. And I knew that their product was so complex that they couldn't get stood up. So I put everyone in a 2-week POC. In those head-to-heads, that's where I had approval, and we won almost every deal. 2 years later, one of the other competitors did that to us in a faster motion. They kicked our ass on like almost every head-to-head. And so the reality is because the buyer wants to get hands-on, they don't trust you anymore. You can't just paint them this vision. And so my whole thesis and our whole thesis at Testbox is, one, we're going to show you this demo that's like what your life is actually going to look like. And then we're going to literally send it to you with one click. In that proof of concept, proof of value. So you're getting hands-on and that data is continuing every day. So you're like, okay, wow, I get it. I can see what my life's going to be like. And that increases deal velocity. It increases trust. ACVs expand, especially on like multi-products. So again, you have to meet the buyer where they're at. And I think, you know, I could go on for days about this. This is like where there's this weird dichotomy.
Do you know what it's like? What you just said there is actually, everybody listening to this should be like, shit, like I say that to my reps. We don't let trials happen. And if you were confident in your products and the value you could provide from day one, like it should be a no-brainer because they go and book meetings, do whatever they're looking to do. And so I actually love that. And if anybody takes this away, it's like, how good's your product and what are you selling to people fundamentally? The follow-on question I would have for you, and this is like a more broad scale, like organization standpoint. You've been a solutions engineer. Not everybody has solutions engineers who are very good at piecing together, really showing value. Who should own the demo? Who should own that experience? Who should own how long it takes? Who should own what happens in it? Who should own that process at an organization?
Yeah. So I love this question. I will also say what's very interesting about Testbox is like most of our users are salespeople. Right? The solutions team owns the demo for most of our customers. And then the main users are solutions, account executives, and even CS teams. We have customer education teams. In my opinion, the solutions team has typically owned the demo in the accounts because they're the ones who have to create the data to get it to do what it needs to do. But this is where Testbox comes into play, that we are starting to actually see some product teams own the demos. And that's been a shift and a change that like most of my solutions audience that listens to me is gonna be like, James, don't ever say that again. But the reality is that the product teams are building something and they know how the product is supposed to work. And so if you don't have a big solutions engineering team, the product team should own some sort of the demo, at least the demo narrative, and at least what we're supposed to be telling. And I think that's what we're seeing more and more because as an account executive, one of our customers actually gave me this slogan and I use it all the time now for all of our onboardings and kickoffs. It's like demo with confidence. I had Rhett be like, he was part of our champion group, like our first launch for a big customer. And he was like, this is the first time in my career. He's been at this company for 5 years. He's like, bro, I can actually demo with confidence. I've never been able to show up to a meeting and be able to show my product. And that's what we want to be able to do because, you know, we don't want a demo. We want the demo to be a non-issue, right? It's not going to break. It's always going to work. And if it's either solutions engineering owning it or it's the product team, somebody owns that aspect and that story. And this is again, last like kind of comment about Testbox is like, we've talked to companies who have demo engineering orgs and big demo engineering orgs. We are literally changing the concept of the demo, where all you need to do is actually have an owner of the story. We build the data. We build the synthetic data and the user behavior simulation. And that fundamentally changes this entire concept of ownership and what a demo can and should do.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I asked that is, again, now I think the answer to that question also differs on go-to-market motion, because in a PLG motion, I would say it's growth marketing and product that actually
Sure.
own the demo, right? Because it's
Sure.
fundamentally how do you push people towards certain touch points. I think another component which you mentioned, which is really interesting, is also I come across a lot of organizations where AE will demo, they'll push people into a POC if they do, but then that's managed by the customer success team. And
Mm.
those go wrong, I would say 9 out of 10 times, because
Yep.
the AE is apathetic, the CSM doesn't really know the context, hasn't been on the sales calls. And so
Yeah.
it just devolves into this messy middle where the customer's not happy, the deal doesn't get closed. And so I think what you've just mentioned is spot on, because now you have actually like contextual information forming part of that demo environment, which they can then use to drive the results that they're looking to drive with.
And you get data, right? With Testbox, like
Yeah.
we're actually getting behavior data. Like we know who's logging in, how many people they've shared it with. And we actually have data that shows like when someone spends more than 2 hours in your POV, your win rates increase by 30%. And if they actually they invite 2 more people in, it jumps to like 65 to 70%. So there is now real data in that can help. What we want to be able to get to is be able to have the product manage its own proof of value, proof of concept process. So you as a sales rep, all you're doing is getting the alerts to make sure that they're doing the right behavior to find value.
Let me throw a concept past you and just see how you react to it, right? So listening to all of this, you're saying, hey, like we can provide somebody with a data-driven, like real access to the platform. Like, why do you need AEs? And I'll clarify that, right? In the way that surely I can get somebody with intent to my website. I can get them to sign up for my product and fill in fields and information. It then kicks it into a test box like demo environment where now it has the use cases set up. It has that synthetic data. Why do I need to pay an AE 150 grand to sell that solution?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because I think the role of the AE will slightly change, right? I think the role of the AE is going to have to be a little bit more technical. It's going to have to be a little bit more value oriented in situations and motions like that, because at the end of the day, people buy from people today. That might be different in 5 or 10 years from now, but people buy from people today, and people make false assumptions on what your product can and can't do. In most situations, they make the incorrect assumption about what your product is capable of. And that's why the human touch coming in and being that trusted advisor to guide them to find value so they don't drop is super critical and super important right now. I'm one of these firm believers that sales reps are not going away. AI is not going to take that job. I think human experience is more important than ever in this age of AI. Again, even like SenseSpark's value prop, like being able to send a video and being able to humanize the experience.
Yeah.
It's what breaks through the noise in this really noisy world, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it was I was expecting you to go down that route, but you never know, right? There'll be people listening like, I don't want to do it.
I've talked to plenty of people who actually feel that way.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess final question for you, because I'm sure there'll be detractors, right? There'll be people that will be listening to this. No, doesn't make any sense. We should just do typical go-to-market motion, and it's worked for us and it will continue to work for us. Like, what would you be saying to those people? Is it like, actually you're wrong, or there is just a better way of doing things, and other companies that are using solutions like Testbox will get a leg up eventually?
Don't take my word for it. Understand what your competition is doing. And I know that there's so much adage of, oh, we don't care about the competition. We focus on ourselves or our business. There's some businesses that over rotate on the competition, but you have to understand what the competition is doing, because you have to understand what's happening in the market. I've just talked to 2 companies in the last 2 weeks who literally came to us because their competitors are putting 90% of their opportunities into proof of concept, proof of values, and they can't do it. And they're losing every single deal. And so the reality is, like, just because what you believe is right and what you want to do as a business, yes, that makes sense. And you get to dictate that, but it is the market that dictates how you buy software and what people buy. And again, that's why there's so much nuance to this, but it's understanding like your competitive set, your ICP. How are the people that you're selling to comparing your software versus others? How are they buying similar softwares? Because you got to meet them where they're at.
Loving it. Yeah, I love it. Like I said, I think this has been phenomenal from a content standpoint. Lots of stuff that I've learned, and I'm sure the audience has learned as well. I always like to leave the audience with one tactical tip or takeaway, which is, hey, our demos suck. What can I do, James? Like, how can you help me? What would like a final kind of takeaway tactic or best practice be just to improve their demo
Yeah.
experience in general?
Yeah. I would say a tactical tip and takeaway is for if you're a seller and you've sold some deals recently, go talk to a couple of customers that purchased and ask them what was it about the product and the product vision that made them buy. And go and find out if you're doing that in each and all of your calls, because that is something you can control is the story and the narrative. Yes, there's some organizations that say you need to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but I would argue that the best sellers are not following that script that everyone else is doing every single time. So figure out where there's those micro tweaks where you can win in the margins, like my interview series for a plug on being able to just get a little bit better each and every time and then turn that into repeatability.
Yep, love it, mate. This has been phenomenal. Anybody that's listening that's interested about finding out about Testbox, you can find them on their website, which will include in the show notes. James and Sam are both posting a lot more on LinkedIn, which I love to see as well. So you can follow them there. James, any other kind of things that you want to plug? I know you mentioned the podcast. Where can they find that?
Yeah. So we just launched a new interview series, face-to-face interview series called the new Go-to-Market Playbook. You can go to testbox.com/GTM. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify on video. We've got interviews with executives that are really focusing on these incremental wins and incremental changes that are impacting wins. So we call it winning in the margins. So we'll love the follow. We're going to be launching a second round of interviews in Q2.
Cool. Love it. Yeah, really well produced, and those are definitely worth watching. Thanks everybody for tuning in to another episode, and we'll catch you on the next one.